The greatest mentor you will ever have is not someone you hire, not a guru you follow on social media, and not a historical figure you read about in a book. The most profound, most effective, and most demanding guide you will ever answer to is already within you. It is the voice of reason you so often ignore, the inner commander you have yet to promote. For too long, you have been taught to seek answers externally, to look for validation, for permission, for a map. Today, we stop looking out and we start building in. We begin the work of forging an iron mind, one that does not bend to the whims of fortune or the opinions of the crowd. This is the art of self-leadership, and the first skill, the very bedrock of the inner citadel, is self-awareness mastery. I learned this the hard way. In my 30s, during my first venture in the tech world, I was a man running on pure, unexamined ambition. I was smart, aggressive, and completely unaware of the internal forces that drove me. I remember walking into a boardroom to negotiate a critical partnership. The stakes were enormous. On the other side of the table was a man known for his abrasive style. He opened the meeting by casually insulting our initial proposal. I felt a surge of heat in my chest, a tightening in my jaw. My perception narrowed until the only thing that existed was his arrogant smirk. I reacted. I met his aggression with my own, turning a negotiation into a battle of egos. The deal fell apart, and we lost millions in potential revenue. My failure wasn't a strategic error. It was a failure of self-awareness. I didn't understand that my reaction was being dictated by a deep-seated fear of being seen as weak, a trigger installed in me since childhood. I was a puppet, and my own insecurity was pulling the strings. It was only after that humiliating defeat that I began the real work. I developed what I now call the Inner Observer Protocol. It is brutally simple but profoundly effective. Every night before sleep, you take a journal and answer 3 questions. 1. Where did I act today from pure impulse rather than from considered reason? 2. What specific external event triggered a disproportionate emotional reaction in me? 3. What underlying belief about myself or the world was threatened by that event? This is not a diary to record what you did. It is a ledger to audit who you were. It's a diagnostic tool for your own mind. You aren't just writing, "My boss criticized my report, and I got angry." You are excavating deeper. The criticism from my boss triggered a surge of anger and defensiveness because it tapped into my underlying belief that my worth is tied to my performance. You see the mechanism. And once you see the mechanism, you are no longer a slave to it. You gain the power to dismantle it. This is the essence of Marcus Aurelius's practice of self-examination. His meditations were not for us, they were his private ledger, his nightly audit of his own judgments, reactions, and principles. He was observing his own mind to master it. So I ask you, are you the actor in your life's play, or are you merely reacting to a script handed to you by your past traumas and unexamined beliefs? What unseen trigger is pulling your strings right now, in this very moment? The first step to becoming your own mentor is to stop being a stranger to yourself. Once you begin to observe your internal landscape, you will inevitably discover its turbulent weather systems, the sudden storms of anger, the dense fogs of anxiety, the chilling winds of fear. Self-awareness is the map, but you need another skill to navigate the terrain. This is the second framework for an iron mind. Emotional regulation. This is not about suppression. It is not about pretending you don't feel. It is about command. It's the difference between being the rider of a powerful horse and being dragged behind it. An emotion is simply energy and information. It is your job, as a leader of yourself, to interpret that information and direct that energy with purpose. A few years ago, a young founder I was mentoring came to me on the verge of collapse. His company was running out of money, and he had a final make-or-break call with his lead investor in 1 hour. He was frantic. His heart was pounding, his thoughts were scattered, and he was convinced he was going to fail. He was drowning in cortisol. He expected me to give him a pep talk or a clever line to use on the call. I did neither. I told him to sit down, close his eyes, and just breathe with me. I led him through what I call the emotional command system. The first step is physiological. I had him take 3 deliberate breaths. The first, a slow inhale through the nose for 4 seconds, hold for 4, and a long, controlled exhale through the mouth for 6. This is a direct command to the vagus nerve, a biological override that tells your nervous system to move from a state of fight or flight to one of rest and digest. After the third breath, I told him to label the feeling, but without judgment. Not, I am terrified, but there is a sensation of fear present. This simple linguistic shift creates separation. You are not the storm, you are the sky watching the storm pass. Only then did we address the trigger. I asked him, "What judgment are you attaching to this call to produce this feeling?" He said, "If I fail this call, my company dies, and I'm a failure." That is the source code of the emotion. Epictetus taught us the dichotomy of control. Some things are up to us, and some are not. The investor's decision was not up to him. The market conditions were not up to him. The only thing that was truly his to command was his own response, which was being dictated by that single, catastrophic judgment. If this fails, I am a failure. I had him change the judgment. We shifted it too. My responsibility is to present the situation clearly and virtuously. The outcome is not in my control. He centered himself in his duty, not the result. He made the call. He didn't get the full investment, but he presented with such clarity and composure that the investor agreed to a bridge loan, giving him the runway to save his company. He didn't conquer the investor, he conquered himself. Do you own your emotions, or do they own you? When the world provokes you, what space are you creating between that external event and your internal reaction? In that space lies your freedom and your power. With the ability to observe and regulate your inner state, the path is cleared for the third discipline of self-leadership: autonomous learning. The modern world wants to sell you answers. It offers endless courses, certifications, and gurus, all promising to deliver knowledge to you in a neat package. But this creates dependency. It positions you as a passive consumer of information. The true self-leader, the architect of an iron mind, is not a consumer. They are an explorer, a detective, and a scientist of their own ignorance. They don't wait for a teacher, they become the teacher. My own crucible moment with this principle came after my burnout. Stripped of my company and my identity as a successful entrepreneur, I was forced to confront a cavernous ignorance about the very nature of a well-lived life. I could have enrolled in a university philosophy program or hired a life coach. But I sensed that the answers I needed had to be forged, not given. So I embarked on my own curriculum. I didn't buy a textbook about Stoicism, I bought the primary texts of Stoicism. I sat with the unadorned, challenging words of Epictetus, the practical letters of Seneca, the intimate self-reflections of Marcus Aurelius. I argued with them in the margins of the pages. I wrestled with their concepts. I became my own student, my own professor, and my own harshest critic. The process was slow and arduous, but the understanding I gained was bone deep. It was mine, because I had built it myself. This is the principle behind the self-diagnostic method. It's a framework for becoming your own expert. Once a week, you conduct a self-audit to identify one critical skill gap that is holding you back. It could be anything from public speaking to financial literacy to managing difficult conversations. Then, you design a one-week personal learning sprint. No courses, no gurus, just you and the raw material. Let's say you identify a fear of negotiation. Your sprint could look like this. Monday. Read 3 foundational articles on negotiation theory, like the principles from Getting to Yes. Tuesday. Watch 2 long-form interviews with hostage negotiators, deconstructing their techniques for building rapport and managing pressure. Wednesday. Write out a script for a low-stakes negotiation in your own life, perhaps discussing a project deadline with your boss or negotiating a price with a contractor. Thursday, role-play that conversation with a friend or partner and ask for ruthless feedback. Friday, execute the negotiation in the real world. Saturday, review what worked, what didn't, and why. This method embodies the Socratic principle of know thyself. But Socrates meant something deeper than just knowing your personality type. He meant knowing the precise boundaries of your own ignorance. To declare, "I know that I know nothing," is the starting point of all true wisdom. The autonomous learner isn't afraid of what they don't know, they are energized by it. It is a frontier to be explored. Are you waiting for someone to give you the answers you need, or are you willing to do the hard work of forging your own understanding? What critical skill gap, if you were to close it over the next month using nothing but your own initiative, would fundamentally change the trajectory of your life? As you become more aware, regulated, and knowledgeable, you must channel these abilities toward effective action. This brings us to the fourth framework: decision-making architecture. Life is a series of choices, from the mundane to the monumental. Most people make these choices based on a chaotic mix of fear, desire, and social pressure. They are adrift, pushed and pulled by the currents of circumstance. The self-led individual, however, makes decisions like an architect designs a building, with a blueprint, a foundation, and a clear understanding of the principles that govern a sound structure. They choose deliberately, not by default. I faced the most significant decision of my career when an offer came to acquire my second company. On one hand, it was a life-changing sum of money, the success I had been programmed to chase. On the other, it meant surrendering the vision and the team I had built. The conventional approach would be a simple pro-con list, and I made one. The pro column was filled with dollar signs. The con column listed loss of control and an uncertain future for my employees. But this felt incomplete, a two-dimensional analysis of a three-dimensional problem. The Stoic training inside me demanded a third column, a column that changed everything. That column was labeled virtue. This is the core of the strategic choice matrix. It's a simple table with three columns: pros, cons, and virtue. In that third column, I wasn't weighing outcomes, I was weighing character. I asked myself questions like, which path better aligns with my purpose of creating meaningful tools and a healthy work culture? Which choice reflects courage rather than a desire for safety and comfort? 10 years from now, which decision will I be proud of, regardless of the financial outcome? Looking through that lens, the decision became clear. Selling would have secured my comfort, but continuing to build, with all its risks and struggles, was the path that aligned with the virtues of courage, responsibility, and purpose. I turned down the offer. We went on to grow the company independently for another 5 years, and while it was immensely difficult, it was the most rewarding period of my professional life. The financial outcome eventually surpassed the original offer, but that was secondary. The real victory was in making a choice that built the man I wanted to be. The Stoics taught that things like money, health, and reputation are preferred indifference. They are preferable to have, but they have no bearing on your actual worth as a human being. The only true good is virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Therefore, a good decision is not defined by its outcome. A good decision is one that is made virtuously. You can make a virtuous choice that leads to a terrible outcome, and it is still a good decision. This frees you from the tyranny of results you cannot control, and anchors you to the one thing you can: the quality of your own character. When you face your next important choice, are you optimizing for comfort, or are you optimizing for character? What would your decision look like if your highest principles, not your immediate desires or fears, were your only guide? A well-designed decision is meaningless without execution. A clear purpose is useless without action. This is where the fifth and perhaps most demanding discipline comes into play: personal accountability. In a world that has mastered the art of blame, outsourcing responsibility is the default setting. We blame the economy, our boss, our past, the algorithm. The self-leader rejects this entirely. They operate from a position of radical ownership. They understand that excuses are the currency of the weak. The only currency that matters is results, and the person you must first deliver those results to is yourself. I mentored a brilliant young woman, an executive at a fast-growing firm, who was a genius at strategy but a master of excuses. When a project missed its deadline, it was because her team was under-resourced. When a client was unhappy, it was because their expectations were unrealistic. She was always the victim of circumstance, never the agent of the outcome. Her career had stalled, and she couldn't understand why. She was protecting her ego at the expense of her growth. The intervention I staged for her was what I call the inner tribunal. I had her block out 1 hour in her calendar at the end of the week. This was not a time for self-pity or self-flagellation. It was a formal, dispassionate court proceeding with herself as the sole witness and judge. The agenda was simple. 1. Review the charges. State, without emotion, the promises you made to yourself and others at the beginning of the week. 2. Present the evidence. State the objective outcome. 3. Analyze the deviation. This is the critical step. She had to analyze the why using only facts she controlled. Not, my team was slow, but I failed to allocate the necessary resources on Monday, creating a bottleneck on Wednesday. Not, the data was messy, but I did not build in sufficient time for data cleaning in my initial project plan. 4. Issue a verdict and sentence. The verdict is a simple acknowledgement of responsibility. The sentence is not punishment, it is a corrective action plan. After 3 weeks of this ruthless self-auditing, her entire demeanor changed. She started preempting problems, communicating risks earlier, and taking ownership in a way that inspired her team rather than demoralizing them. She stopped defending her ego and started defending her commitments. Her career took off. This practice embodies the Stoic understanding of discipline as a form of self-respect. Seneca wrote that we should live as if we had a mentor watching our every move. The inner tribunal simply formalizes this, making you that mentor. Accountability is not about shame. It is the highest form of respect for the person you claim you want to become. It is you, today, honoring the promises you made to you, tomorrow. Who do you blame when things go wrong? If you were your own most valued employee, the CEO of your own life, would you be satisfied with your performance and your integrity this week? Mastering accountability is what gives you traction, but traction without direction is just spinning your wheels. You can be the most disciplined person in the world, but if you are climbing the wrong ladder, every step takes you further from a life of meaning. This is why the 6th framework is vision and purpose clarity. This is your internal compass, your personal constitution. It is the fixed point in a chaotic universe that allows you to navigate with intention. Without it, you are merely a ship reacting to the wind and waves. With it, you are the captain, setting a course for a chosen destination. For years, my own purpose was a murky, externally defined concept. Achieve success. What did that even mean? A certain number in a bank account? A title on a business card? I achieved all of it, and the success felt hollow, like a beautiful fruit with no taste. The anxiety that had driven me to succeed was still there, just with more expensive distractions. My burnout was a direct result of this purposeless striving. In the quiet that followed my collapse, I had to confront the real question: what is the point? It took me months of reflection, journaling, and stripping away layers of social conditioning. I had to distill my life's mission into a single, actionable sentence. This is the work of North Star navigation. Your task is to craft a purpose statement that is not about acquiring something, but about becoming or contributing something. A weak purpose is passive and selfish. I want to be financially independent. A strong purpose is active and often serves others. My purpose is to build systems and share knowledge that empowers others to achieve financial sovereignty. Mine became to forge an unbreakable inner peace and to help others build their own. This statement became my filter for every decision. I began aligning my daily actions to this North Star. Before I take on a new project, mentor a new person, or even commit to a social engagement, I ask a simple question. Does this move me 1 millimeter closer to my North Star? If the answer is no, I don't do it. It is the most powerful productivity system I have ever encountered because it is a system of elimination, clearing away the trivial many for the essential few. This practice is the modern application of the Stoic ideal of living according to nature. For the Stoics, our nature as human beings is our capacity for reason and our innate social impulse to help one another. A life of purpose, therefore, is one where your actions are guided by reason and are aimed at contributing to the common good. When your daily tasks, your career choices, and your personal goals are all aligned with this single virtuous purpose, you achieve a state the Greeks called apatheia. Not apathy, but a tranquility of mind that comes from a life free of internal conflict. You are no longer torn between what you should do, what you want to do, and what you actually do. All three become one. Are you merely busy, or are you truly effective? If you had to write your life's mission on the back of a business card, a statement that would guide your every action from this day forward, what would it say? A clear purpose and disciplined action will inevitably lead you to a collision with reality. The world is chaotic and unpredictable. Your plans will fail, you will be betrayed, and you will face obstacles that seem insurmountable. This is where the seventh skill of self-leadership becomes your armor and your sword: resilience and adaptability. The common view of resilience is the ability to take a hit and bounce back to your original shape, like a rubber ball. But the Stoic ideal is far more powerful. It is to become anti-fragile, to not merely survive stress, but to be transformed by it, to become stronger because you were hit. The most visceral lesson I ever had in this was during the dot-com crash of the early 2000s. The company I had poured my life into, the one I had refused to sell, was wiped out in a matter of months. Market sentiment shifted, funding dried up, and it all came crashing down. I lost everything I had built. My first reaction was despair. I saw it as a monumental failure, a permanent stain on my record. For weeks, I was lost in a fog of shame and anger. It was only when I returned to the writings of Marcus Aurelius that I found a way out. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." It was a mental alchemy. Could this failure, this devastating obstacle, be the way forward? I began to reframe it. This wasn't a failure, it was the most expensive and effective MBA I could ever receive. The collapse wasn't a death, it was a sparring session with reality that exposed every weakness in my strategy and my leadership. I didn't lose a company I paid for a priceless education in market dynamics, risk management, and emotional fortitude. This reframing wasn't a lie, it was a more useful truth. It transformed me from a victim into a student. The lessons I learned from that collapse became the foundation upon which I built my next, far more successful venture. This is the anti-fragile mindset in practice. It has two components. First, you must learn to reframe setbacks as training. When a project fails, you ask, what specific lesson did this event pay for me to learn? When you face criticism, you ask, what truth might this person be showing me that I'm too arrogant to see myself? Second, you must actively seek small, voluntary discomforts to inoculate yourself against the large, involuntary ones. Have the difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Take a cold shower in the morning. Deliberately choose the harder project. Each of these is a small dose of a stressor that strengthens your psychological immune system. You do not build strength by living in comfort. You forge it in the controlled fires of voluntary hardship. Do you pray for an easy life, Or do you train to be strong enough for a difficult one? Look at the single biggest obstacle in your path right now. Stop seeing it as a wall. How can you instead see it as a stone upon which you can sharpen the blade of your character? We have now assembled the core components of the self-leadership operating system: self-awareness, emotional regulation, autonomous learning, decision architecture, personal accountability, purpose clarity, and resilience. But these are not separate tools in a toolbox. They must be integrated into a seamless, fluid practice. This brings us to the final framework, the one that binds all the others together: continuous self-coaching. This is the art of developing the wise, calm, and rational mentor inside your own mind, so that their guidance is available to you in every moment. This is how it works in my own life. Let's say I receive some unexpected bad news, a health scare, for example. The old me would have been thrown into a spiral of anxiety. But now the internal operating system kicks in. The inner observer first notes the physical sensation of fear without judgment. Immediately, I use the 3-breath reset to keep my rational mind online. Then, the autonomous learner activates, asking, "What do I need to understand about this situation? What are the facts, separate from the fearful story I'm telling myself?" I research, I talk to experts, I gather data. With the facts in hand, I use the strategic choice matrix to map out my options, not just based on medical outcomes, but on which path represents courage and responsibility. I commit to a course of action, let's say a series of lifestyle changes, and I use the inner tribunal weekly to ensure I am following through. I check this plan against my North Star. Does this action support my purpose of building an unconquerable mind? Yes, it does. And finally, whatever the outcome of the tests, I view the entire experience as a training ground, an opportunity to practice virtue in the face of uncertainty. This entire internal dialogue is a form of self-coaching. It is guided by what I call the internal mentor protocol, which revolves around asking powerful questions. In a moment of crisis or confusion, you pause and ask yourself, what would the calmest, wisest, strongest version of me do right now? What is the most virtuous action I can take, regardless of the outcome? How would Seneca or Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius advise me in this exact situation? This is not a mere intellectual exercise. It is a profound conversation with your own highest self. The Meditations of Marcus Aurelius are nothing but a record of this exact practice. He was coaching himself, reminding himself of his principles, guiding himself back to reason. He was building his own mentor. This is the ultimate goal of self-leadership. It is to cultivate a mind so well ordered, a character so well forged, that you become the source of your own strength, the architect of your own tranquility. True strength is not given to you by others, it is forged from within. Your challenge is this: do not try to master all 8 skills at once. Choose one. Which one framework, if you focused on it for the next 30 days, would have the greatest impact on your life? Choose it, commit to it, and live it. Which skill will you master this month? Tell me your choice and why in the comments below. Let's begin the work. Subscribe for more frameworks to help you build your own iron mind. Remember, the mentor you are looking for is you.